Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 revised order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, meetings of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District School Committee will be conducted both in person and remote through March 31st, 2025. Agenda items, those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed. Items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. This meeting is being recorded by CTSB and school committee recorder. Once transcribed and approved, minutes will be made public and posted to our website. This is a meet and confer, which is a little different than a regular meeting. We encourage school committee members to participate more, to have kind of a free-flowing conversation, and ask questions whenever you feel necessary. Just a little more relaxing, no votes. So Peter, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so just two things. We have two topics for tonight. So first, we're going to hear from students and Laura Rodriguez about the prevention needs, and Z about the prevention needs assessment survey report. And that'll be the first piece of this. And then the second piece we'll hear mostly from school social workers around the district's continuing response to ongoing mental health needs. So I think these two things connect really well. Everybody in their packet, and we've got some copies here, have like a high-level summary of this report. And then if you're really deep into data and you want to look at the crosstabs, somebody could take this from me because I don't need it. I've looked at it a lot, and to go really like granular. There are lots of different ways to look at it. So a really neat thing, and we'll have folks come up and do introductions. But both groups of presenters tonight put together a really nice slide deck. So that'll ground what they're presenting, and it'll also be a resource document for us to go back to later, and for maybe parent, family, school-based conversations to happen at some other time. So later, with their permission, we'll include those in the packet, so it's there as a resource. So Maddie, since you're the most well-known to this group, why don't you introduce your team and then come up or sit wherever you want, but I think come up.
Are you roses and thorns, or are we not doing that?
No, we okay. Total meeting confer. So we're gonna what normally we do, like roses and thorns, like what's going on in each school, but we're skipping that tonight entirely to focus on these two topics.
Okay. Well, I am Madeline Hardy. I'm a junior. You guys know me. And this is Laura Rodriguez and Leslie Bautista Cruz. And Leslie is the Mount Everett co-chair and for Southern Berkshire Community Health Coalition, which and I'm the monument co-chair. And Laura, do you want to give like a mission statement or?
Sure. Are we? Is this where I should be?
No, I think you need to come up so that microphone's on video. We can sit up a bit more comfortable.
Sure. All right. Well, hi everyone. I do have a little prepared speech just to like make this formal for our co-chairs who are just really amazing. So I'm Laura Rodriguez. I'm the director of the Southern Berkshire Community Health Coalition, which is housed by Railroad Street Projects. My colleague Zinka Steam is joining us virtually. We're a coalition of community members. Sorry.
She's saying hi.
Oh, hi. Okay.
Hey, we hear you.
So where did that come from? So we are a coalition of community members, primarily from the education, health, substance use, treatment and prevention sectors that meet monthly with the goal of substance use prevention that incorporates a holistic view on public health for youth, for young people. Our coalition is youth-led. The co-chairs who will present today will has spent a lot of time interpreting data with the support, some support from Zink and myself, and together we intend to present our findings from the PNA and connect those findings to what we are seeing in our community. So I'll just pass it to you.
And
too.
just as you start, tell me when you want me to click the slides or.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I guess I'll introduce myself a little bit more. Hi, my name is Leslie Batista Cruz. I'm a junior at Mount Everett and I'm one of the co-chairs this year. I decided to join the Health Coalition to really learn about the PNA survey. I have taken it before and will take it again next year. And I think it's really important to spread awareness about these rising issues within our schools and community.
Hi again. I am the monument co-chair. The reason I joined Southern Berkshire Community Health Coalition was because I wanted to improve the mental well-being and substance use for youth in the community, as well as provide safe and accessible resources to those seeking help.
All right, so what is the Prevention Needs Assessment Survey? It is an online survey that is taken every 2 years by 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And it focuses on a variety of questions, focusing on protective factors, risk factors, and substance use, as well as getting information from the community, family, school, individual, and peer. And our Southern Berkshire Health Coalition mission is to improve the holistic health of South County youth and families by promoting community partnership and resources. Some main issues that we realized through this survey from the survey data is that there's a lot of relaxed attitudes towards alcohol and cannabis. Massachusetts has legalized cannabis for both recreational and medical use, and especially around here in Berkshire County, there's lots of cannabis shops, which allows for easier access to the community. Not only do students realize like the normalization for cannabis, but as well for alcohol and drinking with parental permission. This includes drinking within their own homes with their parents' permission, or drinking at someone else's home with the people's parents. As well as our high economy and isolation. A lot of people turn to drugs as a way of coping, which rises our mental health concerns, such as depressive symptoms. Some high-risk factors we want to lower are laws and norms that favor drug use, low commitment to school, and low perception of risk in drug use. In 2023, 54% of students noticed laws and norms that favor drug use within the community, which is a lot higher than the 38% nationwide in 2023. Low commitment to school reached its highest point at 56% in 2021, and this could have been an effect from the pandemic since we were still hybrid and everything was virtual. And it slightly decreased in 2023 to 52%, but still was above the nationwide at 48%. Low perception of risk in drug use for parent individuals, 68% in 2023 compared to the 55% in the nation. As you can tell from the statistics, all three risk factors have kept increasing and almost contain half of the student bodies. Or more than the student bodies.
Okay, low protective factors that we want to raise. As you can see, all the percentages from Southern Berkshire County are lower than the nationwide percentage. And I also just want to point out that the 2021 data is an outlier because that it was a bit tainted because of the pandemic. So it probably would have not been so low or so high had the pandemic not occurred. But interaction with pro-social peers, pro-social involvement, and rewards for pro-social involvement were the three most reported like protective factors. And for rewards for pro-social involvement, the 2019 data is nearly 6% higher than the 2023 data, and the interaction with pro-social peers the 2023 data is 6% lower than the 2019 data. And we're just looking to raise these factors.
And Maddie, can I just say one thing quickly? That pro-social in this case is meaning, positive interactions, positive after school activities such as clubs, sports, and then rewards is like being acknowledged by the community, being acknowledged by each other, by their peers.
And then a snapshot of the concerns that we saw in 2023. Alcohol is kind of the main substance that was reported, with girls 43% more likely to have drank than boys. The 2023 data is higher than the nationwide statistic, as well as the statistic from 2019 and 2021. An increasing number of 54% of South County students believe that community laws and norms favor drug use, which is also a recurring theme in this presentation. While 44% report parent attitudes that favor drug use, and nearly half the students that reported that they drank said that they drank at home with parental permission. Okay, the statistic for female identifying students within the community, alcohol, vaping, and cannabis were the most used substances for female identifying students. Over half of the 12th grade students drank within the last 30 days of taking the PNA survey, and the statistic for 12th grade males was 37.8%, which is 15.5% lower than 12th grade girls for alcohol use.
Do you have and you may get to this later, but do you have a hypothesis around what's going on there?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are things that are kind of, that I could say that aren't, like, there aren't shown in this, that are just my personal hypotheses, which I think girls' mental health is kind of statistically worse than boys. Not to say that that doesn't mean that boys don't have their mental health struggles, but just statistically, that is what has been shown. And I think a lot of the times substance use is a coping mechanism for mental health. And that is kind of what we're seeing here. And that's kind of also been the data within the previous surveys as well. Is the 2019 PNA also shows that the girls' statistic was higher than the boys, but there wasn't so much of a difference as there was in the 2023 statistic. But we'll definitely look into that more and stuff moving forward with the data analysis. And 12th grade was the only grade that favored e-cigarettes over cannabis. 8th grade remains the lowest for substance use, and 25% of the 12th grade students had binge drank within the last 14 days of taking the PNA survey.
Does that mean 36% have vaped in the last 30 days?
Yeah, this is all of these statistics are in the past 30 days of taking the PNA.
And this, because I can't see the numbers underneath those bar graphs, is that 2019, 2020?
It's
8th
8th,
grade,
10th, and 12th grade.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little. Also, if you'd like a copy of these slides so you can look like a little better at the bar graphs, like we can definitely get that to you.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Of the 2023 Black and Latinx student South County statistics, we focus on mental health. A question from the PNA survey was, in the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? In which 16.7% of 12th grade Black and Latinx students responded yes, followed by all of Southern County at 16.2%, and the highest rate was from 10th grade Black students at 17.4%, which is extremely concerning, especially since the amount of Black and Latinx students is a lot smaller than the rest of Southern County. Our biggest takeaway for the Latinx students was from the question, during the past 12 months, how many times have you actually attempted suicide? In which 6.6% of all Latinx students responded to at least having to attempt suicide 2 to 3 times. And although there's low substance use rates, right now, the high mental health rates could be an indicator for future higher substance use rates.
Okay, these are the key takeaways for just the Berkshire Hills School District. So we're not showing the Mount Everett School District specifically, just because we didn't think it was a good idea to compare the schools, because there are just a lot of factors that go into that. But the biggest protected factors, with nearly 70% or over 70% reported that family attachment, opportunity for pro-social involvement, and rewards for pro-social involvement were the biggest protected factors in the Berkshire Hills District. And then for the risk factors, nearly 70% reported that parent attitudes favor antisocial behavior, which is definitely contributes to the decreasing mental health. And 70% of perceived drug use, which has gone up by over 8% since 2021. And then 57% of laws and norms around the community are favoring drug use, which was also something that we noticed in the 2023, the snapshot of the concerns, and that's kind of a common theme throughout this presentation. And then the substance use rates, these are the alcohol for the last 30 days, the highest numbers for every grade. 18.3% of 8th grade students had used alcohol within the last 30 days. 27.5% of 10th grade students and 46.5% of 12th grade students, including the 31.3% had binge drank within the last 14 days of taking the PNN. And 33.3% of 12th grade students had used marijuana, 26.5% of 12th grade students had used e-cigarettes, and these are just the most concerning numbers.
All right, so, it's all good. Hi, everyone. So I imagine after all of this of a download, we have, as a community, as a coalition, through focus groups and interviews, developed a strategy, a youth strategy, to lower some of these risk factors that you heard all today, as well as raise our protective factors and combat, this lack of perceiving harm in using substances, so that we really are talking about it. We're learning about it together. And so the youth strategy is to really is also combating this rural isolation that they mentioned in the concerning snapshot, because again, lots of young people are out there isolated in the rural parts. And then again, this low perception of risk. So one of the strategies, one pillar of the strategy is a peer health educator initiative. So this is where young people, is like a peer-to-peer education where they teach each other about the data. Obviously they have a mentor, a teacher mentor in the space, someone to help guide them through looking at the data and how to analyze it. But they'll really be speaking to each other about these norms that they mention, and about these laws, and about how that's impacting them. And we hope to hold it as an independent study, so multiple students can participate. And we also want to have it at both districts, so that there's actually a way for students to have crossover, because they're often quite isolated from each other. So to have these conversations about drug use, about mental health, and how do we have other coping strategies. And this would also be an opportunity for high school students to speak to middle school students. So we really think that we want to have that bridge where high schoolers are going to middle school students and they're sharing ideas on how to cope with stress, how to manage, family conflict, like all these different things that contribute to young people being more at risk, right, of using substances and becoming dependent. And then our other pillar, so that's one pillar. Our other pillar is a restorative prevention fellowship. So a fellowship is a paid opportunity, a paid educational opportunity for young people to develop a project with myself and other Southern Berkshire Community Health Coalition staff. They would be working on a project that would address substance use prevention and would also address social equity, so that there's a genuine conversation about, again, those norms and those laws in our community. And this way we can really pay young people as well for all the work that they're doing. And then that other pillar would, in the independent study, would provide credit. So either way, they're being rewarded and acknowledged for the work that they're doing.
Okay, so I can speak to our parent and community adult strategies. First and foremost, we are rolling out a series of parent resourcing forums meant to address the relaxed attitudes about risk towards substance use that you've been hearing about, and low risk perception and some of the parental permission that's happening that's like facilitating a lot of use. So we have a forum series, the first of which is actually happening at the Mahaly Performing Arts Theater on Tuesday. That one is going to be specifically about just sharing with parents of children from 0 to 18 how to take that initial step of having a difficult conversation, or opening the lines of conversation around cannabis, but really skills that you can apply to any difficult conversation. So, but we plan to tailor these forums based on needs that parents are letting us know they need help with. So that's the first of many that we'll be rolling out over the course of the next couple of years. And then secondly, we have our Kitchen Table Talks program. Kitchen Table Talks is an opportunity for a trained facilitator to come to your home, and if you're hosting, you can bring in your fellow parent peers, people in your kids' friends group, and we will help you facilitate a discussion to talk about things that we don't usually talk about. We will discuss what's most concerning for us when we think about substance use. What is a reasonable expectation if my child goes to your home? Like, what are your parameters and what is your personal philosophy on that? That's also to help avoid potential conflict that might come up. And the idea of all of these strategies are to just help build community and let parents know that they really aren't alone in this, and that there are a lot of resources out there, and that we can really build this together. We welcome parents onto our parent resource committee to keep generating ideas of how to resource our community in addressing these.
If I wanted you to come and do like a kitchen table talk with my kid and his friends, what's the upper limit like?
Well, generally, these are amongst parents. I mean, I think we have thought about intergenerational also.
Right.
But I think an ideal group is around 10. I think that keeps it pretty intimate. We do have Spanish-speaking facilitators now, so we are also exploring the idea for both Spanish-speaking and English-speaking groups. If people are intrigued but don't necessarily want to host, of hosting at the Family Resource Center. So we're partnering with them to create that option and hopefully really dial in like a monthly option going into the next academic year.
Can I ask you another?
Yeah, sure.
So everybody's aware that the town of Great Barrington is facing a lawsuit, and these numbers got really crummy in the same number of years that the dispensaries had explosive growth. Are you seeing in your data or conversations a connection between those?
I can speak to that. I would say yes. I think that access, and that kind of goes with the community drug laws and norms, is just the access, and how the normality of cannabis that has kind of grown since the dispensaries have opened. If you, I mean, you go into Great Barrington, you can find like at least 3. So, that's kind of what we mean by, parent attitudes, as well as, yeah, just the growing number and the legality.
Yeah, and we also had focus groups, and there was a couple, we had a high school focus group, we had a bunch of, and then we had like an LGBTQ high school focus group. Both spoke to just the amount of cannabis stores and how it was normalized to cope with anxiety or stress with a cannabis, and it's kind of idea that it's a medicine without those conversations about some of the risks. And I think a lot of students felt like there's no, where is that in the schools? Like, where are our classes that talk about drug use, talk about cannabis, where it's not like penalizing people, but it's also acknowledging the ways that it impacts your brain, the ways that it might impact how you cope with stress.
Does that happen in the health curriculum at all?
Yeah, Christy, do you want to talk to her just for a sec?
Oh, sure. Amazing.
So the answer is yes. However, we need to remember that the 2023 students that took the survey did not have the health curriculum at all. And even this year's seniors haven't. The current juniors will have had the 1/4 of it, because the way it's structured is, in 9th grade, the students are getting the health curriculum still in partnership with Railroad Street, which is, we have a long history of that. And then the new health teacher that we hired is working specifically in the PE in 10th and 11th grade. So, you know, it might take a few years before we actually see impact from that. I hope that we do. We're gonna obviously keep analyzing the curriculum against data and trying to do some alignment. I was actually talking to a student today, asking about their experience in health, because we're in it right now. And one of the things the student was reflecting on is that some of what they're getting right now is good, but feels repetitive, and that there might be other topics that we should actually really be building in more of. And I think we should be doing that in response to the data. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and I would assume they're getting it in middle school as well, though, right? I'll let them speak to that.
I will say this though, is I understand your question. Anytime you try to pit educators to defend against billion-dollar corporate marketing campaigns, they lose every time. Tobacco, social media, everything. And that's what this is. It's been going on for the last 10 years. $billion equity-driven social marketing campaigns about this. And now we're asking Christy and these guys to push back against that. It's totally unfair, totally unfair.
So yeah, I mean, we have the health curriculum is part of every middle schooler's experience, and it absolutely speaks to this. And we still have, you know, kids getting in school, and we do our best to help them separate.
And actually, we're gonna talk a little bit about that in a minute.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
My point is kind of one of the things you're saying, like the kids are saying they don't hear it in school, and I have a feeling they are hearing it in school, but.
And that's a point with it, and they definitely are, and they're
Yeah.
definitely getting better at that, but it's like throwing sand back in the ocean.
And I would even say something, I mean, what surprised me, I think looking at the numbers, it seems cigarette use was pretty high. And I thought surprisingly high, and I would think that we don't have a very like pro-social, like it's one of the things where I think some amount of advertising has been working, where it's like.
Well, no, it started in the 80s restricting the amount of
Right.
advertising that could happen.
Right.
What's that?
And it's still that high.
Yes.
So it's the shame about tobacco use is we almost won that, right? Like you never win a war on anything, and we almost won that war. And then the vaping thing happened and all those gains were right out the window.
We do have one more slide.
Yes.
And then we'll resume this robust conversation. So how can the school committee help? Now, these are recommendations that I thought a lot about, and I think they really range from things that people who are in the school could do tomorrow to things that we can all think about together over the next several years that are really about just building. So, you know, encourage school staff recognition of individual students' growth, you know your students better than a lot of people. So, you know, everybody has different levels of achievement, and it's really worth grounding in making those recognitions and really, when we talk about rewards, it's really just recognizing any sort of progress that the student's making. Expand access to off-campus pro-social programs like R.S.D, Rail Street Youth Project, through school transportation and community partnership. Continue rigorous accountability in the district with anti-racism, anti-bias, and DEI work. Incorporate PNA data into district visioning work and school committee decision-making. We almost got there just now. Increase opportunities and decrease barriers for 5th to 8th graders to participate in Southern Berkshire Community Health Coalition meetings and initiatives. That's sort of like a combined opportunity for education in our meetings. That's why we decided to host 2 meetings at Du Bois this past year. We're gonna expand access to that, and I think mess with the timing a little bit to make that even more accessible. But also it's an on-ramp for leadership in the public health space. Partner with our coalition on parent resource initiatives and consider integrating peer health education and PNA analysis into the curriculum to make that really sustainable. And then join us at a meeting to keep the conversation going. We have an open door policy. We meet typically the first Thursday of the month. We alternate school districts. So our next meeting is at the Du Bois Library, first Thursday, May 2nd, April 4th, from 8:30 to 10:30. So, you know, come say hi. You want to keep the conversation going.
And we make it fun. We got donuts, the sweet
Oh
stuff.
yeah, we have treats. We always have snacks.
They still have the peer education program at the high school? Cause I know
You're
one,
dating yourself.
I know I'm dating myself, but I remember when I was there, I believe you let us, and another student and I, we used to go down, I think it was the 6th graders, and we would go down and teach them about drugs and alcohol and.
First half of the year, we did a training.
All of that, yeah.
Yes, I love
And
that.
then we did 6 weeks of visits to the middle school every week.
Yeah.
A group of kids would come down and take over the classes.
So, Z spoke to this already, but I'm just gonna echo what was shared. Last year, as part of our academic affairs process, Iona and Ryan and Michelle came in the context of shifting the PE curriculum. They also included the proposal for peer health course, which we did offer this year to seniors. We only had 8 students sign up for it in the fall. Michelle Campbell actually led that course. And one of the things, when Sean Flynn and Iona, and Z and Laura and I think maybe Colleen was there, we sat down to talk about what Z was sharing with all of you about thinking about the peer health model moving forward, was that the idea of structuring it as a class in the school just puts restrictions on who can participate based on schedule, especially when it's a single offering like that. And so we were brainstorming about, like, if we're moving this work forward in partnership, how can we do it in a way where we're opening the door for students who really want to be involved in this? And so that was the idea of we're going to be trying this independent study with internal adult mentors. So like Michelle, Colleen, Sean, other folks that are passionate about this work can mentor the students like in the school, and then also work with our partners who will come in and do trainings with students and support them in growth. There's work to do around curriculum for what this is gonna look like, and that was part of what the conversation was. And we're super excited about the opportunity, and I believe that they are as well. And, you know, I don't think it'll be exactly the same model you described, but I really appreciate the question, because I do think that that work peer-to-peer is critical.
We were able to do it because we got a couple of grants. We hired a representative now in the House, Mindy Dunn was her name, who came in and did some training. The kids did it after school, it wasn't part of it was like an activity.
Yeah.
We signed up
it's like a
for
club.
it, and I think at one time we had 14, 15 kids, so then we divided into teams. And they worked with the sixth graders, sixth graders, yeah, because it was the old Cyrils. So, I don't know, we had some, it was interesting.
Yeah.
We do have, on a smaller scale, we have middle schoolers in the 7th and 8th grade, and you, mentoring middle
Yeah.
schoolers in the 5th and 6th grade, but it's a much more constrained program than we were discussing, but it is helpful. The students, 5th and 6th graders, you know, to a 5th grader, an 8th grader is old and experienced.
Right.
So it helps, and we help keep those conversations in a positive direction.
I think what I'm most excited about in, you know, being part of helping to build this initiative along with SYNC is that we are really going to facilitate students in designing the course. So that'll be part of it, establishing a design team and, you know, really uplifting what they're looking for and what they really feel will land with their peer, you know, their contemporary peers, but also with middle school students.
I have another question. So there are all these like perceptions out there that may be accurate or inaccurate. So parents might think like, the kids in France drink, so I'm gonna let my kids drink because it works in France, right? And they grow up and they're not alcoholics because they have whatever, Pinot Noir with dinner, right? So there's stuff like that, or marijuana is legal and it's sold, but people don't make the connection to like the really detailed brain research, right, about sort of adolescent development and while many would argue that guys continue to try to catch up to women throughout life, particularly in the like 14 to 25-year-old range, it's a really tough time for young people to be using drugs and substances because of just where their brain is at, right? But people that buy into the notion of it's okay to have 7 dispensaries in our town, don't recognize that. How do you combat some of those widely held perceptions that may be really inaccurate?
I mean, that is one of the missions of these parent resource forums. I mean, the one that we're hosting next week will provide a lot of medical, well-researched information that we've had fact-checked. It'll help like debunk some myths that people have in their minds and really gather data that we have. We have a lot more data since it's been legalized as well. So I think that that's sort of our place in this, is to provide well-researched education. And, you know, we're definitely not in the business of judging, you know, familial decisions or behaviors or even use. We just really want to equip people to make informed decisions, and particularly for young people, I think of it as informed consent. That's where the peer health initiative can be so powerful, because we have the power to bring in people, educate young people at the 5th and 6th grade level to be experts on their own experience and make an informed decision about the first time they decide to experiment with something. You know, ultimately that goal is to delay that first time, or, you know, if people, you know, for young people really in it with addiction, just thinking about how can we shift behaviors. So if I'm getting high at lunchtime, maybe I can wait to the end of the school day. Maybe that's what harm reduction looks like for that young person. So we are trying to like provide enough information that we can really address like that whole spectrum of, how school philosophy is happening.
Yeah, and address the stigma. Stigma's huge. You know, young people won't even talk about it with adults or like adults to young people because it's so much stigma, and yet it's so normalized at the same time, right? And like Laura's saying, so we want to delay that first time use a little, yeah, as much as possible.
Anyone else?
Bullying came up in the survey, so what were your takes on that and how that fits into this whole picture? Kind of bullying plus low self-esteem, bullying around self-esteem issues, all of that kind of stuff.
I don't have like the hard numbers at my, but like at my fingertips, but I do see that as being incorporated into, the peer health initiative in particular, because I do, you know, one of the things that we'd like to do with that is to bring in social norms campaigns and, you know, invite young people to consider, you know, what do we owe to each other, like in our relationships with each other? You know, what do we owe to each other as a school community, as a student body? And think about that. So it's something that we're, you know, aware of and want to incorporate because we know it does. It is tied to substance use.
Yeah, I mean, we got here, you know, in 2023, like 53% in terms of students, like attitudes favoring antisocial behavior. Is that kind of what we're speaking to here? Wasn't sure if I got the question right, but it's quite high.
Yeah.
Yeah, bullying. Well, so that antisocial behavior is kind of speaking to that. It's both that, and it's also like oh, it's fine to smoke whenever. Those also are antisocial behaviors, but bullying would be under that as well. So that's at least half students who are like, yeah, this is not an issue, but as we are hearing, it is. And at the same time, like, how do we address it as a way of not stigmatizing the student, but really inviting them into tools to converse?
I was just gonna make a comment that, on page 24 of the Massachusetts thing that does Berkshire Hills, I don't know about South Berkshire. It's interesting that there's a gap between family domain in regards to pro-social behavior. 55%, it is, the Berkshire Hills norm is 55% family family positive protection, I guess I'll use that word.
Family attachment?
Yeah, family attachment, and then 74.2% in school. And
Yeah.
I've always thought that, you know, school sometimes gets a bad rap because we hear about all these antisocial things that are going on in school. You read the paper, you know, fighting, all this stuff. Well, I think when you take a look at the big picture, the schools are really doing pretty well.
Absolutely.
When you look at 74%. So in a sense, maybe, and again, the schools are doing everything they can. It would be great to get, like, for example, on a lower level in the elementary and the middle school, PTOs to get involved with doing more of what I would say, and I judge this totally on a parental viewpoint in my own situation, getting support with parents. Parents don't want to feel they're odd out. When my daughter comes to me, or she used to, I had 3 daughters, and, oh, there's gonna be a party, can we go? Well, you know, my wife would go and call a phone and call up and say, well, who's gonna be there? And we just did it. The kids didn't say, oh, I'm going somewhere tonight. Oh, no. The old thing used to be, oh, we're going to Friendly's after. Oh, yeah, right, yeah, okay, when's Friendly's close? You know? No, you're coming home. And I think when you do that, you know, we didn't feel odd out, but we had parents say, how do you do that? And I'm not that we weren't the greatest parents. You know, when I got mad, I swore all the time, so the kids would say, Dad, you shouldn't do that, you know, but that was the way it is. But I think parents need support. And your idea of having this kitchen table, that is really, because that's where it starts.
It's really
Parents
powerful.
can't feel that they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's wonderful that school is perceived as being very positive, which I think is one of the good things here.
School is absolutely a protective factor. In general, schools are very successful in providing a protective environment for most students. So this is really meant to be a report card on the outer community.
Yeah.
It's helpful to know for the schools, just to like connect those lines, you know? But yeah, to your point, kitchen table talks, I'll just say, having participated in several at this point and being trained as a facilitator, they're really powerful. We're all living these isolated lives, so setting the stage to just connect and talk and share space with each other, that in and of itself is very powerful, but just that like acknowledgement of we're not alone in experiencing this, how do we share resources, you know? It's really powerful, and having experienced several, I've definitely left these experiences feeling like relaxed and resourced and like it's very thought-provoking, so I can speak to them.
It reminds me, Bill, when my older kids were in 6th grade, there was some work at the middle school around like family mentoring. And that carried straight through their time in high school and college, and groups of families sort of got bonded in 5th and 6th grade. And we all had each other's phone numbers and we all talked to each other. Now, that didn't mean that some awkward, bad things didn't happen. They still did, but each group of parents had 10 other parents that were in like concentric circles with who their kids were. And there were lots of times when phone calls were made. At like the witching hour, right? Like 11, 12, 1, and everybody was on the same page because relationships were built really early.
Yeah, it's nice for, you know, your young person to know that if they don't feel like they can call you, they can call somebody else that you arranged for them to call. That's a really good safety plan, you know, so things like that come up at kitchen table talks. Just nice.
This is great. Thank you so much for
Doing
the work and presenting.
Yeah. And we hope to be back next year, maybe in April when we have the next rally.
We might have to come back sooner for when we're looking at the district and school improvement plans to have you weigh in on parts of it.
Absolutely.
Is that how that will factor into like the wellness initiative? Because I could be wrong, but I thought the wellness committee years ago was born out of some of the results that were coming up from this survey.
Yes.
And then the wellness committee is what created the wellness position.
Yeah, which is a byproduct of the coalition, actually. Yeah.
So it would just be good to hear kind of how we come full circle on that, or how it all ties that together.
Absolutely.
Because I know you say that this is more about the external community, but we're all here in the capacity of what can be done within the context of the district and the schools. So that would be good.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to really go into further discussion about these numbers, now that you actually have the survey in your hands, you know, we're always open to that. You can contact Zink or myself and we can talk stats with you. No problem.
Yeah, geek out.
Thank you, Zin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're gonna transition to some of what's happening in a school-based way. And some combination of the principals and I are gonna talk, and then likely a couple people will join us online as well. Okay? As you probably know, we've got a number of social workers in each school. We also have psychologists in the schools. We have 3 guidance counselors at the high school, one at the middle school. And all these people work together with teachers and with community partners to figure out all sorts of ways to support students. So give me just a sec to share this set of slides.
No, you don't want to see my email.
Yeah, welcome to the table. They should contact the parents. Sometimes parents call me and tell me something, you know? Yeah. And some of those relationships are like years. Yeah. So therefore, kids go have the parents. Absolutely. Is that it is?
Did you involve the overnight? Do you remember an overnight?
No, I don't think so. Julie and I were part, I don't think we.
We used to do overnights in the student center.
I did one of those.
Now
Did
you're
you?
dating yourself.
Oh, I was part of this whole program, and I'm old, that's why I had to bring it up, I didn't know how old I was.
I just
Gave
thought,
us
I
all
just
away.
thought it, I mean, yes, even though we still got some of the, oh my God.
There's a
seriously,
camera here,
we're
they can tell how old you are.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're transitioning, and I'm gonna start by sharing these slides, and at different points, I'll have Lynn come up and talk to some of it. So the people that put this together are Colin, our Director of Learning and Teaching, and three of our social workers. So Casey Wilton is at the high school, Lynn Casella, who's here and is at the middle school, and Colleen Meany, who's at the elementary school. And this is like the high level thing, right? So we're doing a ton of stuff to supporting student mental health through MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support. And tier 3 services remain a real barrier, with students waiting for months to access care in the community, and staff and families really have limited options to do that. So I was talking to Rich today, or earlier today, and it's a question I ask people a lot, so I'll ask this, don't answer it, Rich. But how many child psychiatrists do you think are in Berkshire County?
0.
Yeah, one. Right, all of Berkshire County has one child psychiatrist. Now, that's not to diminish the role of social workers and psychologists and other mental health, licensed mental health people, but it's cuckoo that we only have one child psychiatrist in all of Berkshire County. So if you wanted to get your kid to see a therapist, it might be a 6 or 9 month wait, and you might actually have to go out of county to get somebody. All right, so that's coming off a pandemic, when we just saw all the stuff about anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, substance and drug use, right? So we're in a real pickle, right? Worse than a pickle, like it's really serious. We've done some interesting work, and this is where we're gonna start, and then we'll shift to our local work. But there's this group called Cartwheel, which offers teletherapy online, and we've done some really interesting work with them, and the slides will go into it. We're gonna continue to work with them. We have a partnership to support 80 students. And the neat thing is a very short wait time, like at most it's a week or two. And they also are really multilingual. So if you thought it was hard to find an English-speaking therapist, try finding a Spanish-speaking therapist, or a Haitian Creole, or Mandarin, or even a less popular language, right? It's impossible. So they can do that. It's evidence-based, both therapy and psychiatry, no wait lists, lots of languages, all sorts of insurances accepted. It's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., so kids can take advantage of it outside of school time, though many students actually find private spaces in the school and take advantage of it during school time. All sorts of case management, so it's not just kids, but it's kids in the context of their whole family. And the Cartwheel people will collaborate with our own people, right? Which is pretty neat. So here's some numbers, usually 7 to 10 days. 92% of students feel better after some sort of care with Cartwheel, which is great. And 9 in 10 parents recommend those opportunities to a friend. This is a neat quote. Cartwheel care was such a lifeline for us. I've been searching for a year, trying to find someone. The process from school to you was effortless. I recommend the program to everybody. Right, and that's
What is the approval process?
in each building, and Lynn can talk to this in a sec, but
Okay. Yeah, we have that.
they connect through a school-based social worker, and it's very expedited.
Is Cartwheel only work through districts?
I don't know, I think primarily through districts.
Right, so Cartwheel's only been in existence probably about 18 months now, and they work through school districts. A lot of school districts in Massachusetts have actually signed on with them because they're actually out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. But they are expanding across the country.
This is small print. I'm so sorry about that. When we put the slides together, there were 9 students awaiting therapy assignments, 18 are receiving ongoing care, and 24 of our students have graduated from Cartwheel, right? So it's short-term focused therapy, and when people are managing, they complete it. There's some people stay longer. And Cartwheel's trying to grow. So I think let's start, Christy, with this slide at the high school. Often we present elementary, middle, high. These slides we did the other way, so high school, middle, elementary.
I think we need copies eventually of all these slides.
Yeah, all of this will be in the packets. We were literally editing this like till right before.
And I am gonna name, so Casey worked on putting all of this information together and couldn't be here. I don't think she's even online. Lynn has a lot of information about this universal screening that I'm gonna talk about. I think in the middle school slides, there are more details about it. So if you just hold some of your questions until we actually get to that point, it's more likely she will be able to answer them anyways. But I'm just gonna give you some of the data. This is the second year the clinical team has been doing the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. So in 2023, the clinical team, which at the high school is Casey Wilton, the clinician, the Pam Morehouse, the school adjustment counselor, and then Nicole, the school psychologist, also supports, and she does also work across to the middle school. But the 3 of them work together, and they screened each of our grades twice, so that was 611 screenings that they did, and did 51 follow-ups with students. They do a passive consent in our newsletter, so only 4 students were opted out of it. This year, they have screened students in grades 9 through 11, so there's been 251 students that have been screened. 32 of them scored a 20 or higher, and when you see the slides from middle school, you'll understand a little bit more about what that actually means. And so those students are considered priority, and the clinical team at the high school works together to follow up with students directly based on these screenings. We have continued to struggle a little bit with screening 12th graders, because 12th graders, we do all the screenings through our advisory, and 12th graders are the least invested in advisory, and because of how we're running advisory, if students have internships and stuff, they're often coming in after advisory, and so we lose a lot of the students that are 12th graders. So the clinical team is troubleshooting like how to do it, and it's looking like we'll probably be doing it during their 12th grade English classes, because that's the place we know all 12th graders are. Additional supports that we just wanted to highlight at the high school. You've heard us talk about these before, but we do have the BRIGHT program, which is the Bridge to Resilient Youth in Transition. Casey is actually the clinical staff connected to that program directly. So there are 21 students that are supported there this year, and the support ranges from anything where a student's been out for 4 weeks for some reason, and they're transitioning back into school, and they literally start their transition back in, being in there the entire day, to being in there half day or certain periods, and then the whole point is to try to graduate students out as soon as they're ready. Once a student's in BRIGHT, they're considered an alum of BRIGHT, and they can always stop back in to access academic support or clinical support. So that's one of our supports at the high school. This year, Casey worked with Tim Johnston from Railroad Street to do this past fall, a 6-week anxiety group, a based group. So Tim met with the group of students during the first semester that were struggling with anxiety and vaping, to give them some tools to help them manage the anxiety in ways that are not vaping in the bathrooms. So the clinical team is working on recruiting students for the second round of this for this semester. Substance use support is being provided from the grant funding that the Green Center was awarded a few years ago to provide the staff. Gail Sykes is our new person. She actually joined us because we had a transition. So we had one person working with us all of last year and into the fall, and then there was a transition that happened, and now Gail is with us. She's currently supporting 8 students that have been identified either as using or at risk for use. Students can either be referred from SST, which for the high school stands for the Student Support Team, which is a little different than the middle school, so excuse our acronyms. But the Student Support Team consists of the nurse, the 3 clinicians, the 3 guidance counselors, the assistant principal, and Sarah Mead, because she does a lot of work also supporting students, and referrals come out of that process. Other students actually request service, and so they can access that service in school. Collaborative care, you've heard a lot about over the years, so I'm not going to dig into like all of what that is, but we do have 10 families at the high school, which means that they, are getting the support outside of the community connected to the clinical staff at the high school, and there's a partnership that happens. And for all of these things, parental consent is obtained. And then the one other thing I would add that is actually not on this list, and it's because Casey's not connected to it, but I'm thinking about it, is we do have our therapeutic learning lab in place with a new special education teacher, because last year that program ran and we were not able to get a full-time person in. Jackie has been wonderful, and Nicole Cass, the school psychologist, is the clinical staff kind of connected to that program. So students that are in there get most of their clinical support from Nicole. And then Pam in the high school operates as like the general school adjustment counselor for students any student that wants to access someone. So I think that's it for my slides. The only other thing I did want to share is that the district has moved to Panorama as a way to survey students and also gather information about their social and emotional well-being. We did not include any of that in here. At the high school, we gave the survey, and the survey was set up wrong, so we don't have any of the data for the fall, but we will be giving it again in the spring. And I think the middle school had better luck, so I'm going to transition over to the middle school.
No, great, thanks, Christy.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Linda Zella. I am the clinical social worker at Du Bois. And first of all, Peter, I want to thank you for asking me to join you this evening and give me this opportunity, because nothing gives a social worker greater pleasure than to be able to talk about their trade. And so, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to stand because it's easier for me to move around and to actually see what is up here. So I just wanted to start with this statistic because I think that it's really poignant. How are our kids doing, right? And I want to thank Maddie, right? Because Peter, when you asked Maddie, what do you think? How do you think, why do you think girls are, at a higher percentage of using alcohol, right? And you based your hypothesis on excuse me. Oh, and I'm sorry, I did not introduce Lily. Lily is our therapy dog at Du Bois, who apparently needed some introduction as well. We haven't been home yet today, so she came with me tonight. But you based your hypothesis on your experience, and your experience, both at the middle school and now at the high school, right, is so incredibly valuable and is supported right here. So nearly half of all students surveyed. This was a survey that was done, let me see, put my glasses on here, by the 74million.org, that is an organization. It's, they write about what's going on in education across the United States. But surveyed in 2023 school year reported that depression, stress, and anxiety make it hard for them to do their best in school. This proportion had increased steadily over the course of the pandemic from 39% in the spring of 2020 to 48% in 22-23. So it's what we all know. There has been a steady incline in anxiety and depression in our students since the pandemic. So what are we doing about it? How are we addressing it? At Du Bois, we also are using the SDQ, which is the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire. Ideally, we would like to administer the Strengths and Difficulties Questionnaire 2 to 3 times a year, because we want to have benchmarks. We want to know whether our interventions are working. Unfortunately, for this year, we've only been able to implement it once. It is a 25 question brief scale that covers these 5 categories, right? Emotional symptoms, conduct problems, peer relationships, pro-social behaviors, and hyperactivity and inattention. So it's a self-report. We give this during our crew time, which is our 27-minute block of time in the middle of our day, where every student in our building is connected to an adult. And that's when we gave our survey screener. I'm sorry. So this is what we saw. This is for last year because we have the most data. Last year was the first year that we were able to implement universal screening. And we were able to do it for our entire student population. So last year, we screened 329 students. So we were able to screen all of our students. Now, the categories in which the survey is set up are close to average, slightly raised, high or actionable, very high or actionable. And it's questions like, how do you feel in general while you're at school? How you feel when you're at home? Have you been in a situation where you have been bullied at school or felt that you've been bullied? Things like that. It will ask, do you worry a lot? Do you find yourself fidgeting? Right? So questions that come under those 5 categories. They answer, it's a 0, 1, or 2. And then we have it set up. They do this in a Google form. It is administered electronically. So they jump on their computer. It literally takes them between 5 and 7 minutes for them to complete. It is asking them for their responses over the last 30 days. Have you felt? Let's say. So we see that last year we had 49 students that we needed to follow up with. It was really for the proportion for 329 students. It was
Sorry,
back
I'm
one
gonna
slide.
click the
Yep.
page. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So we had 49 students who were in the very high actionable, 15% of our 329 students needed follow-up. So last year, we had 3 social workers on staff. So myself, Don Sacco, who's the school adjustment counselor, and Beth Walker Thomas, who was also a social worker, were on staff. And the 3 of us met with all 49 of these students. As part of a follow-up, what we do is we have a second set of questions that we ask students, right? How are they in that moment? How are they feeling in that moment? What are some things that might be going on for them at home or in school that are impacting or influencing their mood? What brings them joy? Right? Because we're looking to see how connected are they? Number 1, to their families of origin. Number 2, to their school communities. Who's someone that you could reach out to if you were feeling alone, sad, needed help, right? So these are the kinds of things that we do in the second interview when we meet with these students. Based on the information that we collect from them at that point, we will then go through the types of services that we can offer. And many of those have already been discussed here tonight. We might offer to them the opportunity to check in with one of us. We might offer them the opportunity to engage in cartwheel. We will reach out to parents if we feel that the level of need is such that the parent needs to be brought in. Okay. Unfortunately, because as Peter pointed out earlier, we live in a therapy desert here in the Berkshires, for lack of a better way of putting it, because our ability to outsource our mental health needs to our community no longer exists, unfortunately. So it's constantly trying to regenerate and come up with new and creative ideas to be able to meet the mental health, the rising mental health needs, right? So we've got rising mental health needs and lowering resources, right? So the gap, right? How do we fill that gap? That's what we're constantly battling with every single day. So this year, to date, we have only been able to survey our 8th grade. And that's partly my fault because I was out sick with the flu for several days earlier this month, because it usually happens in the month of March. And I was out because of a death in my family prior to that. But coming up in the next couple of weeks, our other 3 grades will be surveyed. But the interesting information that you see here is that our sample 78 8th graders, right? Out of 78, we had 13% or 10 students who scored in the very high actionable category. Now this year, it's myself and Don Sacco at the middle school. And so we were able to see all 10 of those students. We have a window that we use, right? So we have to see these students within 5 to 7 days to check in with them. The survey does not ask about suicidality. So if we were using a survey that asked about suicidality, then that window would shrink considerably, right? You would have to see them within 24 hours. We also use passive consent. So what I did prior to starting this whole screening process this year was I sent out a passive consent form through Parent Square. And we actually had, I think it was 11 or 12 parents who opted their children out. And that's higher than it was last year.
Just, I'm gonna interrupt you for a second, because we were talking about this as people were coming in. When I got here, the prevention needs assessment survey, when it was administered, then families had to opt into it, right? And if you use an active consent, then typically the opt-in rate is like 30% or something. It's terrible, because who's gonna take the time? And I think that actually was a paper form to fill it out.
And you get non-response bias, so the
Yeah,
survey.
right, but so now almost everything's switched to this passive consent, which is you assume people wanna do it unless they actively opt out. So the PNA data got much better, because it went from 30% to 98%, and this too, right? So it's funny how that shifted as an approach to asking people to participate in things.
The interesting thing about this is, so we had 11 guardians across all 4 grades opt their students out. It was the first time that I used Parent Square as a way of sending out this passive consent. And the responses were all immediate. Like within 24 hours, I had the 11 responses, and then I had no more.
No.
So I started to wonder about whether or not, the person who got it on their phone or in their text, right, it was so immediate, and then they responded immediately, if that increased the number of opt-outs. The other screening that we do at the middle school is the SBIRT screening, and it's a brief intervention and referral to treatment, and that goes along with what we've been talking about all evening, right? This is mandated by the state. So this is a screening that is conducted at both the middle school and the high school. And what the state mandates is that 1 grade at the middle school and 1 grade at the high school receive this screening. So at the middle school, we chose to screen grade 7. And I won't read this to you, but you can see what it screens for. So we're starting at grade 7 to collect information. And what we use as a screener for this is called the CRAFT 2. And if you can flip to the next screen for me, thank you. All 7, so again, last year, they have not been screened again. This year, the screening usually happens in April. Last year, all 7th graders were screened with the CRAFT. And these next couple of bullets here, it says 4 students screened positive and received a follow-up conversation. So when it says screened positive, it's not like screening for COVID, that they screened positive, but they answered the questions in a way that would require a follow-up conversation. So we had 4 7th graders who received a follow-up conversation. So that, and then the next one, it says 0 students received follow-up to address the fact that they had ridden in a car with an individual under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So the state asks us to report on those 3 things. They asked to know how many students were screened, how many received a follow-up, and how many of them had ridden in a car with someone who had been drinking. Which I think is interesting information that the state is gathering that information. And then the big thing about SBIRT and about, I think, everything that we do is about building rapport, right? So the school nurses are very intimately involved, at least at the middle school, let me speak for the middle school, they are intimately involved in the SBIRT screening process, right? So again, that's another person who's building rapport with students, along with, myself and Don Sacco and the usual faces. but it's really about the rapport that I think speaks to the statistic that you gave earlier around that 74%, right?
Yep.
That the more that we can reach out and build this rapport with our students and help them to feel safe and secure and held in an environment that it's going to start to help to address some of the mental health needs. So Cartwheel, we talked just a little bit about Cartwheel and what it is. It's an online platform. We currently at the middle school I have referred 19 students to Cartwheel. So I'm kind of the Cartwheel spokesperson at the middle school. I'm the point person. So if a parent or someone wants to make a referral for a student to Cartwheel, they come to see me. And referral can be initiated by anyone, but how the process works is if I get a student's name, the first question I'm going to ask is, has the parent been contacted? Right? And if the answer is yes, I say, great, and I can proceed with the referral. If the answer is no, then I contact them and I say, hey, listen, you know, Johnny's teacher thinks that he might benefit from this service. I explain it. They give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down. When I get the thumbs up, I complete a really simple referral form online. It asks what the reason for the referral is. It asks if, you know, what the insurance information is, if the student will be receiving services in school or at home, and what the parent's information is. And that's it. It literally takes me about 10 minutes to complete a referral to Cartwheel. Once I push submit referral, it goes into the system and someone from Cartwheel, a Cartwheel case manager will pick that up. They've developed a really nice platform that shows us all of our students who've been referred and an outline of all the steps that are taken, the date, the time, who the person is who tried to make contact or made contact with the family, what the conversation was and where they're at in the process of onboarding this student for therapy. So it's a really nice streamlined system. So we currently have 2 students in the outreach phase, which means that Cartwheel is reaching out to them, trying to make contact with the family. 1 student is currently in intake. During the intake process, it is 1 meeting with the parent and the student. Both have to be there. That's the intake meeting. So we have 1 student currently involved in that. We have 8 students currently in individual therapy, 10 have graduated, 27 are inactive. So that means since the inception last year, when we onboarded Cartwheel last year, since its inception, we've had 27 students go through. And we currently do not have any students or any parents in the parental guidance portion. And that's more geared, I think, towards the elementary school, where Cartwheel will work with a parent directly around supports for their child. One point I do want to make here is that 3 of the referrals that I made personally this month were as a result of the SDQ screening follow-up that I did with those 10 students who scored in the highest portion. Yes.
There were 2 categories, very high and high, both of which were actionable.
Yes.
What happened to the other, to the high, not the very high? Does this include those, or what happened to them?
Yes, so the high students are that, so I would say the very actionable are like our tier 1s that we have to see very quickly, right? In our tier 2, we do follow those high. We do follow up with them as well, so they are included in that 3. 1 of them is actually in that category. The other 2 are in the very high category.
So they are included in this slide. Those students are part of this number?
Not necessarily. So when we interview those students, they take the survey, we interview them. Then we decide if the student needs more services or if they're okay. Then we have to decide what kinds of services might they need. So we might offer them meeting with the school adjustment counselor, meeting with me. We might say, we have this online therapy platform. Are you interested in that?
And Lynn, they could be already in therapy with somebody
Someone
else.
Yes,
too,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And you're going through that process for all the students that ended up in the very high or the high.
Correct.
And the only differentiation is the amount of time that you get to them.
That's
If it were like
correct.
a triage.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you. So for additional supports, right, we recognize that we have this gap that we talked about, right? What are we doing? Well, first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to our crew program. Like I said a few minutes ago, crew is that time of day. For us, it's at 11:58 or 12:25, where every single student in our building is connected to an adult. And the research has shown over and over and over that if students can feel a connection to one caring, supported individual in their life, that it makes all the difference. And in the crew program, we're fortunate enough where crew sizes are small, so it might be 1 to 12, you know, one teacher to 12 students. Some are maybe a couple higher, some are even smaller than that. And it's an opportunity where we work on SEL, social emotional learning. We use some of the curriculum from Ruler, which I think you guys have all talked about in the past. We're talking about identifying feelings. How do we take those feelings? What do we do with those feelings? And it's really a really nice opportunity for our students to have these connections with other adults. Currently, we have a 12-week social skills group that's running for identified 5th grade boys using the zones of regulation curriculum that is being facilitated by, we have a graduate student who is doing an internship with me this semester. So she and I are running that group together. I have a 12-week psychoeducational group for 6th grade non-binary students. I also have a 12-week cognitive behavioral group for 7th and 8th grade female identifying girls in the TLC program, which is the therapeutic learning program that I meet with weekly. We have 2 12-week young men's groups for identified 8th grade boys. It's facilitated by Rudy Bach from the Elizabeth Freeman Center. And Rudy, for those of you who don't know him, is just an outstanding facilitator and man who has a way of presenting himself and connecting with these boys around what it means to be a male in society today. And the boys who are identified for this group are boys who last year scored in an actionable area on the SDQ is one way in which they were referred, or they were identified by their teachers. And what's really interesting, I'll just share this anecdote quickly. We started the group last year, and Rudy and I had some discussions and decided that we were going to try and roll it over and see what happened. And when I told the boys, you know, that we were doing the group again, they were, you know, they seemed kind of excited. They were happy about it. And parents, I got a lot of positive feedback from parents. But the day that they walked into the classroom and saw Rudy, I saw young men running up to him, hugging him, high-fiving him. Rudy, you're back, hey man, like, you know, like an NBA player had just walked in the room. It was really amazing to just see the connection that he had made with them the previous year and how deeply they cared for him, in his presence and coming back, what that meant to them. It was really, really quite moving. We have a 15-week Latina girls group that is after school. It's self-selected, so through flyers and word of mouth, girls could sign up for that, and that just started. I think we have 6 girls who are in that now. That's facilitated by Valerie Mercado, who is actually a school adjustment counselor in Pittsfield, who also consults with Christina Marks and Associates, and so we were able to grab her through that and partner with Christina Marks and Associates to have her provide that service for us, because that is an area that, as you all know, that we're really lacking in. Like, we just do not have enough Spanish-speaking therapists, Spanish-speaking people in general, in our building to address the needs of that community. We have 26 students involved in family care, and currently the therapeutic learning center that I am part of, we are supporting 12 students, along with our autism and behavior classroom is currently supporting how many students, Miles? Because they didn't have that number.
Which program?
ABC.
It's between 7 and 10 right now, closer to 7.
So between 7 and 10 students in our autism and behavior program. So there are a lot of things going on, and I want to give a shout out to all my colleagues who support all of these endeavors, because it's a lot of work, but the rewards, like I said, are really great once you can make that connection. Right? And I remember when Maddie was in middle school, and I just gave her a great big hug, because it was so nice to see when they grow up, that in middle school, we don't always get to see the seeds that we planted, right? So kudos to you, girl, you go. So again, thank you. Any questions that you have, we have to entertain.
How is all this financed? I mean, does Rudy do this voluntarily?
So Rudy does it through the Elizabeth Freeman Center. He does it under the umbrella of the Elizabeth Freeman Center. So the Elizabeth Freeman Center pays him.
Okay.
And he comes in and runs this for us.
I mean, almost everything is partially underwritten by grants that our partner organizations get.
Okay.
Or that we get, or we get together. And some of it, like Cartwheel, they have some big grants, and then we have some grant funds that we use to help support it, and it's the best investment ever. The collaborative care one, and that started probably now 7-8 years ago. That's supported in lots of different ways, in CHP and Fairview/Berkshire Health Systems are playing a role in that work as well. And part of this is it's part of people's jobs.
Right, I was gonna say, it's part of the
So-
operating budget.
Part of the operating budget, so all different.
The SBIRT is a state mandated program. Does the state pay for that?
I don't know the answer to that.
As this committee knows, I don't like state mandated mandates, because they mandate and we pay for them. So I don't know. I'd like to know the answer to that.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
seems-
we can dig into that some
Okay.
more.
Yeah,
but
that's a good question.
That one, like the return on investment is tremendous.
Yeah.
Right, so it's not weeks
Yeah.
and weeks and weeks of testing, it's relatively limited.
It's a really, the craft survey is only 4 questions.
Yeah.
So it's a very brief survey. How many students do we have in 7th grade, Miles, do you know?
100 and.
Right. Thank you.
No, it'd just be nice to, does the state mandates it, and it isn't, as you said, it's important, then should they pay for some of this?
Yeah.
Like, you have to administer it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is I think Lynn spoke to this, there's a whole team working around this, so
Yeah.
it's social workers, it's psychologists, it's nurses, it's people whose titles are guidance counselors, and then all these, and psychologists, and then sort of everybody's keeping an eye on the young people, can also make referrals on top of that. Yeah, it's a lot.
Did you get feedback at the end about what was successful for all of the kids in these programs? And from not only the students, but from the people running them and from parents? How do you evaluate your progress?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. So in the first 3 groups, so those first 3 groups are groups that I run personally. And so there's another screener called the RCADS, that is the revised child and adolescent or okay, I'm getting tongue-tied, revised child anxiety and depression scale. And when I do a group, right, because progress monitoring, man, like, give me the data, how do we know we're being successful? So I screen in, like, where are they falling at the time that they come into my group, right? Where are they mid-group and where are they when they leave my group? So obviously, we want to see a trend line that they're trending up, that they're feeling better. That anxiety and depression, which are the two most leading causes of what brings students through my door every single day, right? If that's decreasing. So that's how I measure that. If, let's say, a student, if that is not going down at the end of 12 weeks, there's a huge piece of data for me. This student needs something more, right? This student needs individual therapy. This student needs to continue in a group or be in a different kind of a group. So now we're assessing what are the needs that this particular student has that aren't being met. Does that answer that question?
Mm-hmm. So how are you doing?
We're actually doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this 6th grade girls group, I have 8 girls right now. It's not binary, sorry. I have 8 girls right now, and we're in like week 6. So they came in, and some of them were, low, average, right? None of them were really, really low. So I didn't have any huge concerns. I would say where we're at now, we're doing pretty well. Like, they're either where they were or they've increased a couple of points.
And how about the other groups?
The social skills group, we've just started. So that one is only in like week 3. So I can't really report on the progress there. And then the CBT group for the TLC program, that again is trending slowly, but it is trending upward. I would say that it is slower than the 6th grade group. But if you look at the population that is in that group, these are students who are in our behavioral program. So some of their presenting problems are a bit more significant. We're dealing with more trauma in that group. So there's a lot of factors that play into how students are feeling and again, reporting on any given day.
And the collaborative care one has its own whole separate evaluation process.
Right.
And they bring in an external evaluator to look at students over time, and we could do a whole nother presentation on that. It's really interesting. Okay.
Are students identified in a different way sometimes by teachers or anything like that?
100%, thank you. Yes, so students are identified in many different ways. So universal mental health screening is just one way that they're identified. Certainly they're identified by teachers, right? So we get a lot of referrals for both individual and group work from teachers. We also get referrals from parents. Parents will reach out, and we get students who self-select. They'll be like, Ms. Casella, can I be in your group? Like, I heard you guys were painting this week and you were, you're making these books, and what are you doing? I want to be part of it, right? And so those are typically the ways that we get referrals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
Yeah.
So Peter, you said when we started, it would be like an hour,
No,
10 minutes, so I apologize.
The best evaluation of a meeting confers when it goes long, because people are engaged in conversation. So now we're gonna move on to Muddy Brook, and I think Colleen worked with Kate around this and other folks in the building, maybe Jody and Melinda and Becky as well. So Kate can work us through this.
Hi, everybody. So just first, I would like to say that we have the advantage of having the small class sizes, and the kids stay with the same adult all day long. And parents tend to be much more involved at this grade, these grade levels. So elementary is very, very different. So the other thing I'll say is that our social emotional learning needs in the building took a slightly different approach to their work this year, because relationships were usually pretty good at those, with such a small group of kiddos, and you really get to know them. So we took the tact of getting the curriculums and tools that we have out there to teachers in a more manageable way, instead of saying, you know, throw this on your desk and do it this way. So we really have worked to roll out slowly the second steps curriculum, which is just general, so everybody has the same language, regardless of which teacher you're with or which grade level you're at. The mood meter from Ruler, and community circles as a way. A lot of people have morning meetings, but they don't do them in a community circle way, and that's one more way to build relationships. High fives, which is positive behavioral support. And the surveys are quite different in our, because kiddos aren't great about self-reporting. So even for Panorama, the younger grades, the teacher does the report out. And the other thing I'll say about Panorama for the students, even the older students, they have trouble placing themselves on the scale the way that it's worded in Panorama. So we have less use for the Panorama data at the student level, but the teacher level is good. Oops, wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was. So these are our sort of tier 2 supports. This year, we could have put the K through 4 bullying prevention stuff either way, on either the tier 1. We're doing, now that we have an extra support for the rest of the year, we're gonna get through all the grade levels, which is a good thing, but it goes right along with the second step lessons. There's grade level lunch groups, K through 4. I heard a lot of the same tools that are used at the middle school. You know, we have Mind Up curriculum. We have a couple of curriculums that you can't find Colleen or Melinda or Jody at lunchtime. They're usually taking groups of kids to work on stuff. Book clubs are a good way to do, you know, working on healthy relationships. We have a particularly active female population of 3rd graders who are reading. A bunch of them are all reading about being better friends, and it's a cute little story about cupcakes. And this is something that's a nuance that we do at Muddy Brook. So we have SSTs, which is our way to say that a kiddo is having academic problems. And what was happening was we weren't having a process to work on necessarily just the social emotional piece of it. So a teacher asks for an academic SST, but the teacher can also now ask for a clinical consult, which is all of our clinicians, the school psychologists, and the BCBA meet with the teacher and talk about the student and what kind of issues they might be having and how they as a teacher can support the child differently. So that's another way, another nuance that we had to put in place, because the kids can't really identify themselves, right? Oh, I did it again, Peter. So some of these are the same. We have 18 families connected with collaborative care. We have strong supports at the Family Resource Center. We partner with Cartwheel We have 11 referrals, and you can see the breakdown there. They tend to not be that effective with lower than third grade online therapy, but it can be done. And it has been suggested in different, I'd like to see more families than the 2 engaged in the parent-guided therapy. Just because at that age, you know, how to control kiddos who have depressive symptoms or are the other end of the spectrum where they're losing it, would be helpful. And our therapeutic classroom is supporting 6 students right now.
Okay, so that's it for the slides on that. Questions or things that folks are wondering about? I mean, they're doing an incredible amount of work in all sorts of different areas. I'm actually glad we put the slides together because it's not, I don't think this work is well known, right? Like if your kid's getting these kind of supports, it's great, but I don't think there's a spotlight on this.
Anyone? Really helpful.
Yeah.
Put everything in one place, really was helpful.
Yeah. So I just have a couple of housekeeping things, if that's okay, quickly. On the bottom of the agenda, if anybody has it, there are a whole lot of meetings coming up. We don't have our next regular school committee meeting until April 11th, but there are a whole bunch of negotiations, building committee meetings between now and then. And I think we're gonna use I'm not totally yet with Steve finalized the April 11th meeting, but people were interested in talking some more about some of the leveling up work, so we're gonna plan to do that on May 2nd. Okay, so that's sort of my schedule updates.
So that would be our next meeting confirmed.
We haven't decided right now.
We haven't decided, but we're gonna present something about it, and maybe a meeting confer, or maybe a hybrid type meeting, I don't know, but I wanted to save space for that topic, because it's an important one.
I think this meeting was awesome and we still have more time to talk, but this wasn't a real meeting confer. Meeting confer should be a no topic driven, not administrative driven, a committee get together and we talk about where we think our school district should be going or voice concerns in a non-outside influence way. Was the, you know, those are a necessary thing.
Yeah, so maybe this is more like a deep dive into.
Which is great, and I like this format too for this type of.
Right.
I hate when you see this type of topic on a meeting with 75 budgetary things too.
Well, that's what we really wanted to do tonight.
Yeah, no, this is awesome.
Is we're not looking at, oh, we have a whole agenda, let's get this over with.
Yeah.
This is the agenda, and let's just sit around and talk about it.
Yeah.
At the discussion about education, can we in some way hear from students and teachers and?
Yeah, Christy and I were talking about that, so
Would we do that before or after a meeting confer?
Well,
Would we want to discuss?
No, I think we should have a meeting. I think we should have a meeting dedicated to that topic. I'm not.
Whether it's a meeting confer or not.
Yeah.
But we plan to bring like lots of data and some students and teachers.
And so people would know about it in advance and could participate if they wanted to.
Yeah.
How would we do that? Would we?
Yeah, I don't have an answer off the top of my head how I would do that. If I'm looking a little overwhelmed, I am a little overwhelmed. We have 2 field trips next week, MCAS next week. I have surgery Wednesday. I'm out for a week and a half. And then when I get back, there's a trip to Vermont, SATs, trip to Broadway, and it's like the week before vacation. So I hear you and I want to honor that and I want to work to do good work and get students and teachers here. What I fear is when I look at the schedule over the next 3 weeks, honestly, and then we go into vacation, I'm just concerned about coming back from vacation and it's gonna be a frantic race to try to put something together. So I might suggest that maybe we could have a conversation where I can bring some information and maybe just include a couple of people, and then if we want to hear more, I could have a longer time to actually get students and faculty who would be interested in coming and sharing more about it.
It doesn't
Because I
all
like
have
to
be
do
done
it
at once.
thoughtfully and not like a race.
The other thing we're gonna piggyback on a little bit is, next week, a number of teachers, staff, and students are going to present at a conference. And they prepared and did research and are sharing that, and I think that would be some of that information would be useful to share with this group and.
Oh,
the public.
absolutely. There's actually quite a lot of it that I think there are students who would really love to come and talk to you about how they've been surveying classes and gathering information from their peers and what they're learning and the conversations they're having with adults about that.
So let's have
So
that.
again, I want to do it well.
Give you time off.
Even when I was speaking, like, it reminded me how powerful it is, like, the closer we can get the presentations to be coming from the people that are doing the work, and that's no disrespect to you, or to Peter, or to Miles, or to, Kate, like, but it's really impactful
Agreed.
and powerful,
100%.
and takes hopefully a smidgen off of your plate.
Yeah.
No, great.
Although I will say, the accounting from the administration is the most important thing. And we have to get better about making sure that is crystallized in written form with hard statistics and not dog and pony show anecdotes all the time, which I feel like is the leading data driver of this committee on every issue for the past 2 or 3 years. And I want to see actual, real assessment data by professionals who are educated to do this, and I want both, but not to the exclusion of. So I'm comfortable with the schedule we're on for that.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? We are adjourned.
Yep, great.